There I am. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking Philly Sports with Matty B program here on the Edge of Philly Sports with your boy Matty B. It is Monday, November the 6th, 2023, and yeah, 8-1, baby, beating the stinking Cowboys 28-23, heading into the bye week, full of a bunch of self-confidence, dominance over our own division. So far, dominance over our own conference. Super Bowl or bust. Or maybe. Because there's a lot of doubt with this football team right now. I've never heard or seen such doubt about a team that's 8-1. But there's a lot of questions. And yesterday was a very frustrating game, and everyone tells me, oh, it's the Eagles Cowboys, it's NFC East. No, it was sloppy football by the Eagles. I don't know how they won. I honestly don't. The Eagles should have lost that football game. They should have lost that football game, but they didn't. But are you feeling confident as the Eagles are going to go into their bye week very well needed due to the injury situation that is now creeping up? And then they're going to come out of that bye week and they're going to continue down the gauntlet that is this very critical stretch of scheduling in the 2023 season. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into some Flyers hockey. The Flyers are on their way to California, better them than me, because you couldn't catch me dead in that state. But they're going to be heading to California for a West Coast trip starting tomorrow night in San Jose. It's going to then go to Anaheim and then LA, which I don't know. What's the difference between Anaheim and LA? Aren't they the same place? Isn't one like a little north of the other, but they're kind of the same thing? Is it like Beverly Hills 90210? Somebody tell me that. I never really understood the difference between Anaheim and Los Angeles. And then they're going to go and finish up. That's it. They're going to go San Jose, Anaheim, LA, and then wrap up the West Coast trip in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's against the Hurricanes next week. So a very interesting West Coast trip with a little spin on it before returning home to Wells Fargo against the Vegas Golden Knights on the 18th, of November. We're going to get into some Flyers as well. And then we're going to get into some Phillies talk, because today, for those of you who are not aware, the MLB free agency began today. That's right. Teams today could tender qualifying offers to free agents. The Phillies were active in that with the one player I think everybody expected them to be active in, and they tendered Aaron Nola a $20 million, upwards of $20 million contract extension. Or I'm sorry, not extension, but a qualifying offer, which then protects their investment in Aaron Nola. If Nola decides to sign elsewhere, the Phillies would receive a fourth-round draft pick in compensation, which, you know what, I'll take that if I lose Nola. But, there's other players on this team that are going to be free agents that the Phillies did not tender qualifying offers to. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And, of course, we'll wrap things up, as we always do here on the show, with my NFL picks for this coming week. And I'll give you my update about how I did in Week 9, and then we'll turn our sights to Week 10. But, of course, there's no Birds Breakdown anymore with Kyle Quinn on this show. We do that standalone thing now called the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. That'll be later in the week. We are going to do one, even though it is bye week. But we're going to recap the Cowboy game with him. But I'm going to get my first shot at kind of sharpening my tools here with the recap of the Cowboy game tonight, but then I'll rehash it all later in the week with Kyle. So looking forward to that. But before I get rolling, let's take a look at everything that's on tap here on the Edge of Philly Sports. Bye week, no problem. We got you covered. We got a full tilt of stuff as we do every single week here on the network. It continues to grow immensely out of control, and I know Big Al, that makes him happy for that. And, of course, tonight you're talking some Philly Sports with me. A little bit later on the NFL draft show, and then they get processed, the Sixers, Sixers and the Wizards post game. That Clear the Ice is not tonight. That's tomorrow night, folks. The Flyers don't play tonight; they play tomorrow. So, but you get the point, and everything else that we have to offer here on EOP. But before, okay, I got that out of the way. Before we get into the meat of the show, let's do some This Day in Philadelphia Sports History, November 7th edition. Nothing really that grabbed my, attention on November 7th, but there was a couple things that grabbed my attention on November 5th. Actually, a little further back from that, November 3rd, is kind of when this little nugget of stuff began in Philly sports history. On November 3rd, I guess we can call it November 3rd through November 5th, 2005. All right, I just presented a date time group. Can anybody out there, I'm going to give you about 5 seconds to try to guess what I'm getting at here. But November 3rd and November 5th is when this little bit of Philly sports history kind of came to a head. It had been kind of bubbling up to this point, but it came to a head in that stretch of time. And so I'll give you about 5 seconds so anybody can guess it. What am I getting at? What happened between November 3rd and November 5th, 2005? I'll give you another hint. It's Eagles related. And I'll give you another hint. It's Eagles wide receiver related. So I'm going to like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, no one guessed. Here we go. So on November 3rd, 2005, all this talk this season about the fantastic, phenomenal job that A.J. Brown has done for the Eagles. And he has definitely entered a different sphere of wide receiver for this team this year. It has conjured up images and memories of wide receivers of the past. And we haven't really had many dominant wide receivers that have come through this town really in the history of this organization. There's maybe about 5 that you could really kind of make an argument. Actually, you know what? There's probably only about 3 or 4 that you can probably make an argument for to be dominant wide receivers. And A.J. Brown has absolutely added his name to that list, especially what he did last year, which was outstanding. And then he's followed that up with an MVP-type first half for the Eagles in 2023. But on this date, or I should say from November 3rd to November 5th, 2005, is when the Terrell Owens thing kind of just exploded here in this town. The infamous locker room fight with Hugh Douglas on November 3rd that got the team, that got everything. Well, it all started with that ESPN interview and then the locker room fight. T.O. wanted to renegotiate his deal, blah, blah, blah. November 5th. And then on November 5th, he was suspended from the team and would never, ever play another game for the Eagles. And then you had the sit-ups in the driveway. That was earlier in the season. I mean, it was just drama all through the postseason after the Eagles had lost in Super Bowl 39. And that was definitely something that dominated the off-the-field stuff of the Eagles and really kind of overshadowed the season, which ended up being a very disappointing season in a whole. The Eagles didn't even make the playoffs that year. But this date, November 5th because it's not November 7th, in 2005, Terrell Owens suspended from the Philadelphia Eagles, never to play a game. He was released or traded in the offseason, ended up going to the Dallas Cowboys, which set up a whole other level of hatred between the Eagles and Cowboys, which I really miss those days of hatred. Dallas week just doesn't grab me anymore, man. It didn't grab me last week, and it's probably not going to grab me later on in the year. But on this date, or November 5th, I keep saying this date, Terrell Owens suspended from the Philadelphia Eagles after all the off-the-field drama about wanting to get a new contract, renegotiate everything. And, he maintains his innocence and he maintains his justification for all that nonsense to this day. And I don't know how you feel about T.O., but T.O. was other level. I mean, he was absolutely other level. He dominated the 2004 season. The Eagles do not get to the Super Bowl. And I don't think they even hang around in the Super Bowl without Terrell Owens on that team that year. He was the missing piece, and they were unable to capitalize on it. But it was 1 year and over because in 2005 it all fell apart. And then on November 5th, he was suspended, thus ending his career as an Eagle after just one season. One season in 4 games, maybe 3 games. That was how he played in 2005. But there you go. That is your moment in Philadelphia sports history, brought to you tonight by the fine folks over at Dolan's on 24 East Sellers Ave in Ridley Park, Pennsylvania. Dolan's for Quizzo, music, great times, memorabilia giveaways, and you don't know who may walk through the front door at any time over at Dolan's. So check them out. If you're ever in Delco, that is, capital D, little E, little L, little C, little O, Delco. Okay? I mentioned Delco. So if you're ever down in Delco, make sure you go check out Dolan's. And tell PJ that Matty B sent you from the Edge Philly Sports. I'm his biggest fan. Okay, 28-23. Let's jump into the main course because, I'm not a guy that wants to kind of mess around. I got to get into this, right? It's been on my mind. I've listened to many opinions about what happened yesterday. I've watched the game myself, obviously. And I live a very active lifestyle, folks. I'm on the go. I'm a kind of a guy on the go. I move around, I move and I groove, and my weekends are not necessarily weekends that many people have in the real world. I actually work harder on the weekends than I do during the week. So sometimes I get kind of caught up and I'm on the road essentially. And Mitch says, "What's up, bro? Mitch, how you doing, man?" Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Yo, Daniel, what's up? So I'm on the road. So a lot of times during the football season, I'm stuck listening to games on the radio, like the old days. Now again, I want to put it in context. I didn't grow up in the era of sitting by the big stand-up radio in the living room, with a glass of Ovaltine in my. No, that's not me. I wasn't alive in the 40s, okay? But there was a time in my life where, even in the 80s, as a kid, the radio was still a very main source of media entertainment. Many nights I would be in my allegedly asleep, listening to a Flyers game, with my little earphones on or my little earbuds. They weren't called earbuds, what they called earplugs or something like that. So a lot of times I have to listen to these games on the radio, and I listened to the majority of the game this week on the radio as I was driving back from Lake Placid, New York, and it was very frustrating. One, Merle Reese, what happened to his voice? Now, I might have missed it on the broadcast, but he never gave it. I never heard him give a reason for why he was sounding the way he did, but definitely sounded like he was sick or lost his voice somehow. So that kind of puts a damper on things. You expect to hear a clear Merle Reese when you listen to an Eagles game. But as I was listening to this game, a couple things jumped right into my mind. Wash and repeat was the first thing, the main thing. How often have we seen this exact recipe kind of just fall out? Game after game after game, it's the same thing. Now, I heard it back week 1 through 4. Give them time. They need to recover and they need to get their legs under them. It's the preseason. The preseason's not what it used to be. They don't they don't attack the preseason. They don't attack training camp the way they used to. You got to let them work out some new, the kinks. They got new coordinators. Listen, be patient. Okay, I get that. But it's week 9, and it's been the same thing every week. And you know what? It was even the same thing in the Miami game in the beginning. Just at some point in that game, a switch flipped, and the Eagles dominated. But it's been the same thing week after week after week. Slow offensive kind of progressions. The defense takes them about 3 quarters to figure things out, and they try to win on talent and talent alone. And it creates these funky, weird games that you're listening to or you're watching, and you're thinking, this is the team that's going to go back to the Super Bowl? And it's frustrating. It's frustrating. And no, I do not subscribe to the Eagle Apostles. A win is a win is a win anymore. I'm not subscribing to that anymore, because it's not about that anymore. It's about Super Bowl or bust. That's how I started the show. Super Bowl or bust. And right now, they're not a Super Bowl winning team. In my opinion, there's too much going on here. I'm not going to put the green sunglasses on, stand, hand to hand and sing Kumbaya out on parking lot M at the link. I ain't doing that, because there's something here that needs to be addressed. The defense is not good enough. The secondary and the linebacker core of this team is abysmal. Major downgrade from last season. Major. Last season was the best secondary. And when I say secondary, I always include the linebackers in that, because in this modern day of football, is there really a true middle linebacker anymore? No, they're not part of the defensive line anymore. If you're a linebacker and you're part of the defensive line, you're an edge rusher. Right? But your typical linebacker today is more for pass coverage, more for that middle field tight end slot guy that comes across and that you're supposed to neutralize. You're not really helping out on the defensive line anymore. And that's just the way the game is kind of, evolved. And I understand that. But last season, for the first time in a long time, we really solved the linebacker secondary problem. But it lasted 1 year. I slammed my fist on this table last March, right? When the 13 free agents of this, I think it was 18 actually, and I think 13 free agents were on defense. 18 total, 13 were on defense, and the majority of those free agents were linebackers and a couple of with the Gardner Johnson crew. Those were the guys that were going to leave, and when they let them go, we started to make excuses for their replacements. We started to make excuses for going out and justifying rebuilding our linebacker core and our secondary core through some whack-ass free agent signings and through the draft. Okay? And listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm against that. I think the draft, I've gone on record and said the draft is a vital part of building a core winner. But to ask all your draft picks at a one class, the rookie class, to step in immediately and be contributors is ridiculous. They're getting beat up and down the field. And this season has been a extensive downgrade and a drop-off from last season. Why? And why are we accepting it? We went through the trade deadline. We ended up picking up Byard, right? That's all we addressed. We didn't do anything else. We Byard in a 5th-round draft pick, a recomp pick. I went on with Kyle last week, and he tried to kind of throw the green sunglasses on me and say, well, you would have been happy if the trade would have happened on the actual trade. No, I need more. I need more because we don't have enough right now. And it's going to get exposed as we move further deeper into this. It might not happen in this regular season. It may also not happen in the playoffs, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the biggest stage, the brightest lights, and that's the Super Bowl. And does anybody feel confident if the Super Bowl were to start tomorrow or coming out the bye week, and this is the team we're going to throw out there against Kansas City, Miami, Buffalo to a lesser extent, I think they've fallen apart, Cincinnati. Is this team going to beat them in the Super Bowl? I don't feel confident. And I'm not saying they won't. And boy, am I not saying that it's going to take people up and down all kinds of emotional waves. But right now, defensively, specifically defensively, this team is not good. I watched them yesterday, and listen, I hate the Cowboys. I hate them, and if we only win 2 games a season, those 2 games are the Cowboys. And to me, it's not a successful year, but I feel better about things, right? But this team tried everything in their power to give the game to the Dallas Cowboys, and the Cowboys didn't want it, right? If the Eagles go out Monday night, 2 weeks from now, and battle Andy Reid, who's 27-4 coming off the bye in his career, because Kansas City Chiefs are on a bye too. They go out to Kansas City in 2 weeks on Monday Night Football, and they play like they played Sunday. Are the Eagles walking out of Arrowhead? I don't think it's Arrowhead, but they're coming out of that stadium. Was it Jihad? Whatever it is. Are they coming out of there with a win? Maybe, right? But are you confident? I guess maybe that's the best question. Are you confident that they're coming out of there with a win? I'm not. Absolutely not. So let's break the Cowboy game down. Merle is 80. Steven, I understand he's old, but he sounded horrible on the radio yesterday. And it sounded like he was dealing with a cold or flu, or maybe lost his voice. Maybe he was yelling too much off mic. I don't know. But he sounded like he was dealing with something. And I hope he's okay. I honestly do. Those coordinators more offensively are just having a very rocky and non-linear progression. A non-linear progression, even within the game, for crap's sakes. Okay, Steven, and I agree with you. It's first of all, I don't look football as linear or non-linear. I mean, it's an ever-changing, down-by-down game, week by week. What they say, a season in a week, right? And then there's even more going on in that game. So I get you. And I don't think more offensively. Well, more offensively because of some of the play calling. I mean, offensively, you can say that Brian Johnson's had problems trying to unleash the weapons, right? Where we have a dominant offensive team that's been kind of handcuffed maybe by the coordinator versus the defense where going into the season, it was really not that good of a deal going in. I mean, the team lacked depth, and that's being tested, and it's failing so far. And we had a new coordinator there too. So I guess I can kind of buy that maybe it's been more frustrating on the offensive side. But right now it's equally frustrating to me because on both sides of the football, they can't seem to get out of their own way. But no, it's a very good point, Stephen. I like that. Thank you. Always good to hear your contributions. The defense bent, broke, and fell down, and somehow they limped off the field with the win. Walter, we've been saying that for 9 weeks, and they're 8-1. Yeah, you're right. I mean, aside from the Dolphin game, which they made those in-game adjustments and actually locked down a very high-powered offense and played very well, has there been any other game that you can look at and say that was a complete game from both sides of the ball? Has there been any other game? Any other? And I get it. It's not going to be pretty every week, but it hasn't been pretty at all. Give me one or two. I don't think so. Somebody shut this Dumbo up. Oh, why? What's that? You don't like the criticism? This isn't America. I don't have the right to say what I don't want to say. I do. So come at me with something more than that. Don't ever tell me to shut up, because I would never tell you. Live it. The American dream. You gotta love it, man. Woo! There was good usage of Dean on the zone blitz that needs to happen when greater frequency. Roby and Bayard need many reps, no doubt. Let's talk about Nakobe Dean, okay? And because this is you bring up an interesting point, Stephen. Nakobe Dean walked off the field yesterday again hurt. I am definitely not on the Nakobe Dean fan club train. I'm not, and I've never been. There's a reason why he fell to third. All right, in that draft. There's a reason why nobody wanted to take a flyer on him. Guess what? It was injury related. And guess what? Nakobe Dean has been nothing but since he's been here. An injury issue. And now he's dealing with another one. And when he is on the field, you're right. I don't think maybe it's a fair assessment to say that he is showing us his true self because he doesn't have the opportunity or he has not been on the field long enough. And when you draft players, you got to draft and sign players with that injury history in mind. Nakobe Dean is a bust. Another missed opportunity for that friggin' GM because he was the smartest guy in the room. We don't, again, we can talk about negatively about Howie on the show too, by the way, out there, Casey Hunter. So I hope you're ready for that if you're still tuned in. Because this is a Howie safe space, right? I don't fall in line with the rest of the apostles, all right? Not when it comes to the GM, the team, or any other team in this city. Because this city was built on criticism. And I'm going to give it. And I'll take it too. Because that's what it's all about as well. But Nakobe Dean has been a bust. In my opinion. An absolute bust. He is our starting middle line. Well, I can say middle. Is he really a starting linebacker? He wears the green dot. But to be honest with you, Cunningham and Morrow have been better linebackers for this team. Right? But yet, again, Nakobe Dean, no one talks about it. We can't criticize him because it would upset His Highness, Howie Roseman. He's a bust, Stephen. He has given us little to nothing. He's given us glimpses. But when you start thinking he's going to get some traction, boom, he's hurt, he's gone. Now, I don't know the extent of the injury because with the bye week, he probably will be back. But to me, don't get me started on Nakobe Dean. He's a bust. A bust. No one in the NFC is winning the Super Bowl right now. It all suspect. Yeah. It is all suspect there, Stephen. I agree. The NFC, because right now, and again, I kind of skipped the paragraph here. I wanted to actually break down the Cowboy game before I went on my little rant about this team. But you're right. The AFC, and really aside from the Cincinnati Bengals, Kansas City Chiefs, and Miami Dolphins, I mean, they're the three front runners right now to potentially get to the Super Bowl for the AFC. And yeah, we've proven ourselves against the Dolphins. We did. And as I said, it was the most complete game we played all season. And we haven't played one since or before. So it's the halfway mark. There's time. But this was not where I wanted to be feeling about this football team heading into the bye week. It's a very, rocky 8-1. And yes, it is. Again, take your sunglasses off. Look at this team holistically. Step back, put the green Kool-Aid down, and look at this team realistically. There's holes. And it's not shoo-shoo holes. Like, no. The secondary is atrocious. And that is going to be our downfall. Because now we're coming up against the quarterbacks like Pat Mahomes, like Josh Allen, to a lesser extent like Brock Purdy. It's going to be interesting as we move deeper into this, how this thing either rectifies itself or the Eagles continue to be exposed, and that's going to start costing them games. But you're right about the NFC, Steven. It's very sus. Without Goddard, we have very little chance to win at Arrowhead. Is it still Arrowhead? Or I thought it was Jiha. Somebody correct me there. Is it still Arrowhead? I think it's still Arrowhead. No. No. I don't know. Anyway, not unless Bayard and Roby somehow magically get continuity. They just not in sync on the back end, especially between the 20s. Yeah. Goddard. Listen, and we'll get to that in a minute here, but Goddard is a huge blow to this team right now. Right now, Morrow is just better coverage and blitzing linebacker than Dean. They got to deal with it. Absolutely got to deal with it. But again, I'm all about holding people accountable, and I was against it on draft night, and I've been against it ever since. Nakobe Dean was a mistake. Maybe if he was there at the 6th round, we could have taken him. But we invested a 3rd-round pick on a guy that honestly, maybe even a 2nd stringer at this point, when he is healthy. Because you're right, Morrow is just better. And so is Zach Cunningham. They're more physical. They're more all flying around the field. Nakobe Dean gets lost out there. He gets lost in coverage. He's non-existent in coverage. He doesn't do anything up the middle. He gets kind of like washed up or engulfed in the play. He was, again, I just wasn't a big fan and still ain't. Jiha is Jiha. All right. So let's get into this. Some of the talking points out of this game. And we're gonna hit some of the major ones. Jalen Hurts. Let's get into him first. Not been the same Jalen Hurts as last year, right? Still a Jalen Hurts that I would take over about more than 3/4 of the quarterbacks in the National Football League. I still think he is the answer. I still think he is going to be a extremely successful starting quarterback in this league, and I think he's going to do probably when it's all said and done break all the records here with the Eagles, and hopefully one day walk away with a couple of Lombardis. But he has definitely been, I don't know, a victim of the coordinator change. There's been some talk that maybe Brian Johnson was too close to Jalen Hurts, and it was maybe not the type of coordinator we needed for him. Maybe they needed someone to kind of be new with him, didn't have any kind of personal connection with him. Or it's the fact that he's been dealing for the 3rd straight year with an injury that might have gotten aggravated at the end of the first half yesterday with that knee injury. Now, again, I mentioned the bye week comes at the best time it possibly could because the Eagles got beat up yesterday. And they won that game, but it came at a price. And we're going to get into those prices. But Jalen Hurts, I don't like the way they're using him. I haven't liked the way they're using him the entire half. Listen, I like Jalen Hurts' dual threat capability. That's exactly the type of quarterback he is. I see him in the pocket way too much, and I think that is the reason that he might be dealing with a knee injury in the first place. Then again, you're going to tell me that last year the reason why he dealt with a shoulder injury is because he was too much outside of the pocket. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I understand that. But I don't like Jalen Hurts as a pocket passer. He's not a pocket passer. He's not reckless either with his feet. He may not make the best timing decisions when it comes to taking off and running. That's been a problem, but they can teach that to him. But he also doesn't put himself in a lot of positions where he takes hits. Even when he gets out in space, he recognizes when he cannot get that extra yard, and that's a huge addition to that dual threat capability. But I don't like the fact that they've used him so much in the pocket this season. And when you do that, you do create the more possibility for injury because he gets more hits. And yesterday it was a nasty little shot he took to a knee that he's already dealing with. Had to leave the game. Thankfully, it was at the end of the first half. He came back for the second half, but noticeably was playing in pain. Admirably yesterday, and helping to lead the Eagles to a win. But good for Jalen Hurts that it's the bye week, because he definitely needs it. 17 for 23, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions on the day. But yeah, Jalen has been a different type of good this year. I guess I'll leave it at that. He's not been bad. He's not been the Jalen Hurts of 2022. He's not been an MVP candidate up to this point of 2023. I'll take him over three quarters of the quarterbacks in this league. Actually, probably even more than that. There's probably like 4 quarterbacks I would take ahead of him right now. So all in all, a very puzzling first half from Jalen Hurts, but a very effective first half for Jalen Hurts. But I would hope that the coordinators will take this time, Brian Johnson specifically, to figure out a better way to use Jalen Hurts on the run. Roll him out. RPO. We've gotten away from the RPOs, and they may have to do that now that Dallas Goedert is gone for some extended period of time. They may have lost that mid-range option, mid-range in terms of midfield option. There may not be that. They may have to create space for Jalen with Jalen instead of the tight ends. So this could be a blessing. I'm not saying it is, but maybe it's going to force Brian Johnson to be a little bit more creative with Jalen Hurts outside of the pocket, because that's where he really is the most effective. But a yeoman's effort yesterday from Jalen Hurts as he stuck it out. He kept in there. He kept pushing the team to victory, and ultimately got the win. But definitely concerning now that he's dealing with another injury. Now it seems like he might have worsened that injury. Here's Stevens Hurts hope. In week 3 to 4 of bone bruise recovery, he regains the speed. Gonna need it. That's how long bone bruises take to heal. Yeah, he is going to need it. Well, I mean, is he though? Is he going to need it? Because he hasn't been used that way primarily this season. But you're right, he is going to need it. You cannot worsen a bone bruise. They just hurt like contact rehab for the post game is excruciating. Yeah. All right. So, and yeah, I know that's one of the reasons why the thing was never really kind of shown up on the injury report. But Jalen Hurts obviously not the injury situation, not a good thing. But I just think that they're putting him, and I said this last year, that they put him in too much harm's way by putting him too much outside of the pocket. Now seeing the other side of that coin, maybe a happy medium is I'm asking for. There doesn't seem to be a happy medium. This year he's too much inside the pocket, and it's causing more hits that he took last year, honestly. More high leverage hits that he took last year he's taking this year by being a more pocket passer. And I think you're taking away a huge part of what makes Jalen Hurts. So get him outside that pocket. You may have no choice now that you've lost that tight end option. And Goedert probably be gone for, well, at the minimum, he's gone for 4 weeks, right? So you're going to have to get creative with your offense. Leo Jones is going to have to be maybe more in that slot. Quez Watkins, if he's still on the football team, might have to actually play again. I don't know what they're going to have to do, or they're going to have to create space for Jalen with Jalen. So Brian Johnson's got his work cut out for him as he's still trying to figure out how to run the offense. Now he's got to try to figure out how to run a hybrid offense without Dallas Goedert there. So good luck, and hopefully he uses his time wisely over these next 2 weeks. But you know what? In all my venom, it was a huge win. Anytime you beat the Cowboys was huge, and especially this season, and especially at this juncture of the season. 8-1 now. What are they? 3-0 in the division. They're 3 games ahead of the Cowboys. Well, 3.5 with the one head to head. They put a stranglehold on the NFC East. They are that much closer to breaking the curse or breaking the streak of not having a repeat NFC East champion since the Eagles of 03-04 did it. So the Eagles are about to break the streak with their own streak. And that is good to see, obviously. But, and especially when this happened, at the end of the day, they got out of there with the win. At the end of the day, they're going down to the bye week with that stranglehold over the division. They're now undefeated in the conference. That's huge when you're looking at seeding for the playoffs, keeping that home field advantage intact. They started that gauntlet of 6 games with a win at home against a divisional opponent. All positives for this team to build off of. Because at the end of the day, I'm not saying that the Eagles cannot be. They got talent. The only reason why they're 8-1 is because they are talented. If they were a lesser talented team, they wouldn't be 8-1 the way they played schematically. Yeah, 4-4. I don't know, 5-4, 4-5. They would be around there if they didn't have immense talent on this football team. But I just want to see it unlocked more. But at the end of the day, you got to feel good about where they're at. You do, but you got to also feel concerned because now it's time. Just like in baseball, you had that first half and you had the second half. The first half is the pretenders. Second half is the contenders. What are the Eagles? We're going to see that. We're going to see that right off the bat. They ended up the first half with it. Now they're going to start the second half in a gauntlet of, what is it? Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco. 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, boom. It's a hell of a gauntlet. And then Dallas and Seattle. So we're going to see it. We're going to definitely see it. But definitely there is a lot to feel good about this team heading into the bye week. That said, the same injury kept Embiid out for weeks. Most quarterbacks would also be out, but his leg strength is so superior. Yeah, I mean, Joel Embiid is, that's totally different. Two different games, two different style of athlete, but you don't want to you don't want to see him hurt. You don't because when he is 100%, he's totally on a different level. The other thing let's talk about is the offensive line. Okay, I haven't heard much talk of the Stoutland U thing this year. It's been a little up and down with this group. Lane Johnson did not have a good game. Jordan Mailata had a horrible game. It's not to say that it's been a bad performance from them from the first half or Sunday, but Sunday was not a great offensive line performance by the Eagles. It wasn't. And but they did have a good bounce back in the second half. They had a really bad first half, but they kind of pulled it together for the second half of this game. They didn't allow any sacks in the second half. And then of course steer the steam fumble recovery after they ran Swift and Brown run into each other. Swift fumbles the ball. If it wasn't for steam recovering, who knows where we're at right now? So you got to give credit there. The awareness of that offensive lineman to be in the right spot at the right time. So a better second half from the offensive line. But, you got to – am I asking too much to see more from this group of, a very, very talented – an offensive line that right now boasts 2 future Hall of Famers? Is it wrong for me to ask to see more? Because I haven't been really overly impressed with their performance thus far this year. I really haven't been. But they had a bounce back second half and really finished the game strong. And I kind of started the show off with the rant of the Eagles secondary, and I guess it really to me boils down with this group. James Bradbury and Darius Slay are significantly different players this year than they were last year. Maybe Bradbury more so. Slay is Slay. I never a big Slay guy. Don't know how he became an All-Pro or a Pro Bowler. I honestly don't. Wasn't there a CeeDee Lamb? What's his face? Guarding CeeDee Lamb most of the game. The rookie, Sidney Brown. Wasn't he on CeeDee Lamb majority of the game? Where was Slay there? Why wasn't Slay on the Cowboys' #1 receiver for the entire game? Isn't that what Slay is? Our lockdown corner guy. Why wasn't he on CeeDee Lamb for the entire game? What's going on there? But he's definitely not had a good year. Bradbury's had a comeback to earth type season, these were all concerns after what they did last year because they both had outstanding seasons last year. But there was concerns they were a year older and you bring them back. And again, I'm not going to rehash all this because I did it all last offseason when they did this thing originally. I wasn't on board with it. But you also factor in the safety play because Byard's not had a really good, first 2 games. He hasn't. He hasn't. It's been up and down with him. And how much longer are we going to deal with the excuse he's got to learn the playbook? The guy's a Pro Bowl. He's an All-Pro. He can't figure out a defense in about 5 days. He's a veteran. Well, why can't he just assimilate and figure it out? That's why you trade for guys like that, right? Because you don't have to waste X amount of time teaching them how to play. He hasn't been that good. I'm not a blank and chip guy. The rookies have been rookies. There's too many of them in this mix, and it's not their fault that they're there. It's their GM that built the team around them like this. They've dealt with injuries. But the secondary is this team's Achilles heel. And my 100%, that is what is going to get this team either into the Super Bowl with a win or it's going to cost them the Super Bowl, is the way this secondary has played all season long. The Eagles did not address the secondary properly in the offseason, and I'll continue to say that. And right now, they're not playing well, and they're getting gouged by quarterbacks week after week. We come up against the bad quarterbacks, and they have great games. We come up against the quarterbacks like a Dak Prescott, who I'm not a big fan of, but for 29 for 44, 374 yards, and 3 touchdowns, it makes a quarterback like Dak Prescott looks very good. What's it going to do? What's Pat Mahomes going to do to this group in 2 weeks? Again, the bye could not have come at a better time, because now we can throw all the eggs in the basket for a show-me game against the Chiefs. Because if they don't figure out this secondary, if they don't figure out, and I don't know how they do that. I don't know what they do, because they're not bringing any more people here. You can't redraft, you can't re-sign, you can't do that. What is Pat Mahomes? Pat Mahomes carved this group up last year when they were good. What is he going to do to this group this week? This group, I don't know what they're going to. I don't know what else to say. It's a problem for this team. The secondary is an issue, and if you don't believe it, you're wrong. Just win against San Francisco. Got her back for 12 tech. So, Steven, are you saying that all you want to see them win in between? You don't care about the Kansas City or Buffalo game. You just want that San Francisco win? Is that what you're saying? Let's face it, secondary is not the same without Maddox. Huge loss. Listen, yes, and I mentioned the injuries, but that's part of the game, right? Injuries are part of the game. You have to have depth. You have a GM that's supposed to build you depth. You know what? I told you guys at the beginning of the season I was leaving my Howie hated home. I don't think I can leave it home anymore. I think it's starting to creep back in because it's kind of resurfaced. This team is not deep enough. They were never deep enough on the defense to start the season. And yes, the injury to Maddox was huge. He was a huge part of this team. But again, when you draft a player or you keep a player on a team, you expect the player to play. And Maddox's big issue was he just can't stay on the field. The Kobe Dean's issue, one of his issues is he can't stay on the field. These are things that need to be identified. These are things that need to be identified and decided upon before you get long-term into these people, right? Now, again, neither one of these guys are long-term guys. I understand it, and Maddox is a good player. But Maddox, the loss of a Maddox-type player should not submarine your entire secondary. It should, in my opinion. It should not submarine your entire secondary. And it has to this team. But you're right. It's been a huge loss. But what are they going to do to fix it? Because what they've done so far is not working out. They are struggling hard to pass cover. And then let's talk about the run game. So yesterday, again, I'm not going to get into all the X's and O's when it comes to, the battles now in town about you got to have a run game versus it's a new NFL. The run game is not important anymore. The run game is goddamn important. It is important. I'm not saying you got to break the bank on a running back. You got to sign a Saquon Barkley, a Zeke Elliott. You don't have to do things like that, but you better have a confident run game. The Eagles are a one-dimensional offense, and it's passing. They don't use the run game. Now, I'm not saying it's because they don't have the talent. I think DeAndre Swift is a very good player. Kenny Gainwell had a very good game. Boston Scott is Boston Scott, and then Rashad Penny is on special teams, right? Is it a great room? It's not. Did we address it at the trade deadline? We did not. But it is a confident room. And you know what? If you're going to say Gainwell and Swift are my guys, then Gainwell, Swift are your guys. Commit to them and start using the run game. This team does not use the run game. They're not a balanced attack. They're not, they're not fooling anybody. Teams are pinning their ears back against the Eagle offense, knowing what they're going to try to do. And they're not even using their quarterback in that role. So the team is completely one-dimensional when it comes to the way they attack an offense, the way they attack a defense. If they don't find a way to mix in that run game, to keep a defense guessing just a little bit, I'm not saying reinvent the wheel. I'm not saying reinvent your entire philosophy. But you got to do more than what you're doing. The run game is non-existent, and they got some decent pieces. Swift is a good running back. He was a fantasy monster for me earlier this season. He's kind of fallen off, but they've fallen off with him. It's not a priority for this offense. It wasn't a priority yesterday. It wasn't a priority throughout the most of the season. But when it has been a priority in games, it has been beneficial to them. They got to get back to running the ball. They got to get back to a more balanced attack. That was, again, you got to do these things to win at the highest level in the NFL. Got to do it, man. So, yeah, not a good running attack yesterday. It wasn't the priority. Howie had to go with plan B once it was also hurt for the year. Felt disrespected. Brian Johnson is one more. Now, listen, again, I'm not pinning on the Eagles' secondary problems on Gardner Johnson. Come on. What was plan B? Don't forget, these guys were all, and it wasn't because he left. No, it was a myriad of issues when a myriad of free agents that left. Okay. Replacing one player, and Gardner Johnson was great for this team, but he was not the defense. He could have been replaced. We just made the wrong decisions. Was plan B the draft? Was plan B to rebuild the defense for 2023 through the draft? Because it doesn't really work that way. He was hoping that all his draft picks would hit. Well, none of the secondary players have hit in the draft. Ringo can't get on the field. Brown's iffy. So I hope that wasn't plan B. But and I don't care if you felt disrespected or not. The hell with him. You know what? Get a helmet, whatever you want. So it was not a good idea. It wasn't a good offseason plan, the way he went about rebuilding his defense. But I was called a hater back then. Probably still going to be called a hater, but whatever. I 100% blame Brian Johnson for the one-dimensionality he has been manning. Absolutely, Steven. We're getting into that time of the year, too, where it's going to maybe be more beneficial to run the ball. You're not going to be able to throw it in 10-degree weather in a driving snowstorm. You're going to have to be able to run the ball. Absolutely. And it's got to be more balanced. The defenses, a defensive coordinator can look at three things on this team right now and try to stop A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Hurts. If you can contain Jalen Hurts in the pocket and take care of those two wide receivers, you got a good chance of winning the game because they're not going to use anybody else. They're not going to try to get creative with the offense because the offense has been so vanilla at times. And when they do run, they run in the weirdest times. The weirdest times. The Eagles' personality is a running mauling team. This is what made them great last year. I don't know if that's a personality. I don't know about that, Michael. They got an outstanding offensive line. They don't seem to utilize them in dual ways. They just have them kind of learning how to pass block. But you're right. They got Stoutland. You got two Hall of Famers on your offensive line. Why are you not running the ball 35 to 40 times a game? It is not that the aspect of running a football is not completely dead in the NFL. I think people get confused between the running game and the running back. Listen, I agree. Breaking your bank for a running back, those days are over because those guys get run in the ground quickly. But you don't necessarily scrub your running game because you can't find the superstar running back. No, you build a competent running back by committee room. You still commit to the running game, and you spread the ball around. I understand. I am 100% on board with not paying a Saquon Barkley or not paying a Christian McCaffrey. Those guys are washed up, man, after 5 or 6 years in the league. But you know what? A Bijan Robinson, I would have taken him right there in the draft. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe he makes this offense look different. Maybe there's more confidence to give him the ball. Maybe it's a Bijan Robinson, DeAndre Swift backfield. That would be outstanding. I don't know. Jalen Carter versus Bijan. I don't know if I would. I'm not sure if I would make it. Now, in retrospect, I don't know. Jalen Carter's been pretty damn good. Right? I don't know. But don't give up on the running game because you don't have the star running back. They're two different things. I understand the philosophy of star running back doesn't exist anymore, and I agree with that. But the running game still exists, and you need a good running game. And I am not a Seth Joyner disciple either. No. But he's right. You need a running game. You can't be one-dimensional. It doesn't work. It does not work. The OC is not that good, but my opinion only. We addressed that a little bit. Maybe he's too close to Jalen. I don't know. But so far, he hasn't been very impressive. Losing Avonte Maddox hurt this team. It has, but it should not have submarined them. They should have been able to have more depth or enough depth to replace him. The Eagles should have been used a second first-round pick instead of Nolan Smith. Yeah, with Nolan Smith. That's another one. What does he play? Does he even play for the Eagles? Is he on the active roster? Is he a special teamer? Because he's not contributing on the field. Again, it's okay to criticize Howie Roseman for not being able to draft well. It's okay. Did you hear me, EOP? I'm criticizing Howie Roseman because he's a horrible GM. Man, it's okay. I want that guy fired so bad. And then yesterday, penalties. Bad penalties. Eagles were flagged 10 times for 98 yards. Just another frustrating day to watch this team just be so undisciplined at times. And 98 yards is a football field, so they were essentially penalized the entire length of a football field. We're going to get into some of the overall stats here in a second, but you can't have a game in this stage, any stage of the season, where you get flagged 10 times for 98 yards. And that comes down on coaching. I think a lot of that is coaching. Yeah, it's just not good. And then my last observation from yesterday was Kenny Gainwell had himself a really good game. That touchdown run was nifty. That's right. I used the nifty word. It was a nifty little run he had down the sidelines. He broke the kind of dove into the end zone. But obviously, Kenny Gainwell was not the answer for this team. But it was good to see him bounce back. It was. And then, heading into the bye week, you got to feel good about that as well. But yeah, those are my observations from yesterday as the Eagles come out with a 28-23 win over the hated Dallas Cowboys in a messed up Dallas week. And I don't know if I really kind of approached that properly last week when I was kind of going off about Dallas week and how much it's changed for the worst. I don't know. But Steven says the whole passing league garbage is like in baseball. Steven, are you really going to bring the A word onto this show? Did you not watch my end of season meltdown Phillies thing? I will refuse to say the A word ever again. That word will never come out of my mouth. Please don't send that word up through the chat. I don't ever want to see that word again. Gets blood from a bad stone, but you need to balance at the highest levels. You do, Steven. You absolutely do. And yeah, you do. The Eagles cannot continue to be one-dimensional. Teams are going to pick up on it. A.J. Brown is starting to demand all that respect right now. Triple team, throw 4 guys on him. You're going to need other ways. Now you don't have your tight end, your starting tight end. He's, Dallas Goedert, for what it's worth, is one of the top 5 tight ends in the league. Now he's gone for maybe the entire season. You got to figure things out. And Grant Calchera is not the answer. Jack Stoll is not the answer. You're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to roll your running back, your quarterback out with his bad knee, or you're going to have to commit to the running game. And you're going to have to say, all right, DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell, because apparently these are the only 2 that I can trust. You're going to have to take us the rest of the way because we've inadequately staffed the running back room, GM. But you guys are going to have to take us the rest of the way because we have no other options, because we cannot just go back and throw it 80 times a game. We got to be more balanced because teams now are really going to key in on our wide receivers because we've lost our tight end. So you're right. It's got to be balanced. The Eagles in the offseason should look at Josh McDaniel as their OC next year. You know what? He was a horrible head coach, and he might be a good offensive coordinator. I don't know. But listen, are we already starting to turn the page? Isn't it Super Bowl or bust this year? I mean, we're only at the halfway point, and that's the good thing about this. This could all turn on a dime. But, boy, we're putting ourselves in a position heading into the second half, aren't we? The Eagles should bring in Rex Ryan as a consultant like Vic Fangio. Why don't they just hire Rex Ryan? Why can't we just hire him? The consultant. What does a consultant do? Does he sit up there in the booth with a headset on? I mean, what does he do? Or does he come and he analyzes film? What does a consultant do in the NFL? Does he come down there and put a gun to their face and say, just pay me money? Because that's I don't know what I do. With Goddard out, they need to utilize Julio more. They need to utilize Jalen Hurts outside the pocket more, or they need to utilize the running game more. That's my opinion. So yesterday, let's look at some stats. They scored 14 first half points, and they scored 14 second half points. I'm a big person of analytics. Oh, I said it. No, when it comes to this. But for the season now, they scored 131 points in the first half and 128 points in the second half, with an average of 15 first half points and 14 second half points. They committed no turnovers yesterday, so good to the Eagles. No turnovers. yesterday. The total stands at 13 on the year. It's about 1.5. Again, using the rule of 5, you can't really turn the ball over a half a time. So we round up, so call it 2. Defense did get to Dak 5 times, 41 yards. There was, I don't know if necessarily it was because of scheme or because Dak just had a lot, he just held on to the ball too long. There was maybe kind of a combo. The Eagles have now sacked the quarterback 30 times for 198 yards, averaging about 3.3 sacks a game and 22 yards. Red zone efficiency, another positive stat. 3 for 3 yesterday. They're starting to turn that around. 3 for 3 yesterday, 20 for 36 on the season, for a 55.56% efficiency rate in the red zone. Needs to be better. That is not a good number. You kind of have to put that first half behind you, start over in the second half next week, and get that thing better. They did commit 10 penalties for 98 yards, bringing their totals up for the season to 47 penalties for 390 yards, averages about 5 penalties a game and 43 yards. They forced 1 turnover, finally got back on that stat page. 11 now on the season. And that averages out to about 1.2 turnovers a game. Final thoughts about the Eagles moving forward here in a second. I could see if the other team was stacking the box with 8 the whole game, but they're not. It's so head-scratching. It is. There's opportunities to run the ball, and the Eagles are just not taking it. I've been saying fire Eagles offensive DC and hire Rex Ryan, and I get laughed at. Again, we're not going to do it this year. Let's kind of keep the focus because that's what everybody wants to talk about, or that's what everyone's on board about is winning a Super Bowl. We got to keep focused on that part of the pie. Firing the defensive coordinator, they're not going to do it now, and we're already looking past this season. We'll see. But Buddy and Rex had 2 of the greatest defenses of all time in the NFL, and the defenses were always in the top 5. But what do I know? I'm just mentioning hiring Rex. No, it's a very good point. I was a big fan of Buddy Ryan. But I get laughed at too from the young folk when I talk about Buddy Ryan. Again, they don't know. They don't remember what it was like here before Buddy Ryan showed up as a head coach. They don't remember. They don't remember the dreck Eagle football was pre-Buddy Ryan. But he'll credit Johnson for utilizing our size in the red zone more efficiently. It's been better. It's been better. I still don't like the creativity in the red zone, but they're getting better, and that's all you can ask for. So 8-1, 3-0 in the division, undefeated in the conference. The bye week midway point for the Eagles has arrived. They have a very much needed week off before they will continue on the gauntlet against Kansas City next Monday night as our primetime adventures continue. Only one more 1 o'clock game, folks. That's like week 17 against Arizona. So can they just give us the win there? I mean, do we even bother playing that game? Does Marcus Mariota play that game? Or what's it, Tanner McGee? Is that the kid's name, the third string guy? Does he play in that game? But my last point on Eagles to Cowboys, the Dallas week thing, right? It's pathetic the way Dallas week is anymore. And I you know who I blame? I blame Kyle Quinn. Yeah, I blame him. Not him personally. I blame his age group. I blame that soft millennial generation of people. They've ruined Dallas week. They've ruined it. They've ruined it for all of us. Dallas week used to be some of the purest Eagle fandom that I've ever seen or experienced. Dallas sucks. Just doesn't have the same anymore behind it when it's coming out of the mouth of a 22-year-old. It just doesn't work for me because they don't have the context. They don't have the perspective of why Dallas really sucks. We were all born into it. We were all slapped on the ass by the doctor, and he looked at us and said, "Dallas sucks." That was how we all got our start. But each one of us ended up getting seared into us a different way. But this group of young kids, they don't have that, and it's because the Eagles have not been bad. They haven't been. They've not been consistently bad in the last 25 years. They've been consistently good. And through bad comes pain, and through pain comes anger, and anger leads to the dark side and all that. But that's where Dallas League comes from, right? I mean, in its pure inception, It was from the Dallas teams of the 70s, America's team, and the Eagles were bad. And every time they would play the Eagles, they'd mop up the Eagles. And then in '80, we got our revenge, in the game that made me an Eagle fan for life, in the NFC Championship game. And then from there, it was on. Dallas week became a whole different thing because now you had a good Eagles team versus a good Cowboys team. And then through the years, it went up and down. Through the mid 80s, the Eagles sucked. The Dallas was okay. There wasn't really much going on there. And then when Buddy Ryan came here, it changed. Dallas week took on a whole other entity. It was really, really awesome what Buddy Ryan did for Dallas week. And it made Dallas week what it was for me. Buddy Ryan did that. From the stuff in '87 with the was it the week 2 game or week 3 game when the Scabs were playing and Landry ran up the score, and then later on the season they came back after the strike was over, and then the fake kneel down by Randall, and then that was all that was God, that's great, that's awesome. That's where it was born. And thank you, Buddy Ryan, for taking it to another level. We need something like that now. We need another level. Now, of course, the other issue is Dallas sucks, and they really do. I mean, I'm not just old-fashioned Dallas hate here. I'm just saying they really suck. They're not a good football team, and it's hard to get down on them. It's like kicking a dying dog. I mean, what fun is it when they can't fight back? So, but yeah, something needs to give, man. We need to get back to that. We need a moment like that. We need a bounty ball. We need a fake kneel down moment. We need something. Maybe we need something. We need something to kind of take Dallas week back to where it belongs, and the wipe clean of this disgusting millennial taste in my mouth. And we need to get Dallas week back to where it was. Until then, Dallas week is a shell of itself, and I blame Kyle Quinn, and I blame his generation of folk for that. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents worth there about Dallas week. Nick Sirianni has stepped in and grow and set to tell his OC to run. What is Nick Sirianni? What the hell does he do? I think he's like any other fan on sidelines. I mean, what control of the team does he have? I'd love to be able to just listen into the conversations on the sidelines. I have a headset, hack into the Eagles in-house audio, and listen to the conversations back and forth throughout the game from the coaches. I wonder what Sirianni says or what he does during the game, because I think he was just there watching it. I think all he's missing is a thing of popcorn and a beer, and then he would be just like us, because I really don't know what he does, and I would love to know. I would love to listen in. So if somebody can get that, just an audio of a game of what Nick Sirianni does, the conversation between the coaches, I want to hear it. I would love to hear it. Steven says Jerry Jones is really the big blame. He pays Dak, who is not the guy. He hires McCarthy, who won the game. He has on. Yes, goes on. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Dallas has just kind of gone the wrong way, and then it's not fun when the other team is, fightless. In my house, there is not any loud. There is not allowed any cowboy gear. There's no cowboy gear allowed whenever your family go. Good. Keep the dream alive, Michael. As a Michigan fan, I will tell you, he even drafts the wrong. He's awful. Yeah. Has Jerry Jones ruined Dallas week? Hey, maybe he has. Maybe he has. I want to see Eagles do a fake knee and then after the play, have Buddy on the face of the big screen. That would be awesome. Something's got to give, man. Something's got to happen. And unfortunately, unless it's in the playoffs, we're not going to see Dallas again in Philly this year. But something like that needs to happen. It needs to just kind of kickstart the whole Dallas week thing again. The problem is, I believe with the Eagles is there's no veteran coach outside Stoughton on his team. Yeah, and that's definitely an issue. But we'll see. As I said, 8-1. I want to believe. I really do. And I say a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff. I am definitely a hot take kind of guy, and I'll admit to that. But there's a lot of what I do with my hot takes, though. I don't lie about them. Like, my hot takes are my own. Like, they're my feelings. They're not necessarily me just trying to, poke the bear. This is how I feel. But I don't want to feel this way. I don't. I want to be on board. I want to jump back on the train. I do. But, and I never thought I'd sit here at 8-1 and be so critical of a team who's 8-1. But, I think Steven brought it up earlier. We don't play in the best conference in football. The NFC is dreadful. It's devoid of talent. You got the Eagles, Cowboys, and 49ers. And right now, the Cowboys, they're not good. 49ers, we're going to deal with that later on, and that the rivalry there, which I think is stupid. There's no rivalry between the Eagles and Niners, but the NFC just isn't a good conference. It's like the old Eastern Conference of the NBA back in the 80s. When the dreck of the conference would battle to go play the Lakers and lose. After the dominance of the Celtics. After those years were over, when it was just like the New Jersey Nets a couple of years went there, Cleveland went a couple times, before LeBron. It was just like that kind of dreck coming out of the East to go up against the mighty West of the NBA. It's almost kind of like that now in the NFC. There's like one team, maybe two, that are decent enough to even get to the position to go to the Super Bowl. And then you're going to run into a juggernaut over there in the AFC. There's definitely a power misbalance in NFL right now. And at 8-1, you should be feeling great about this football team. You should. But when you're staring at the next 5 games, as I mentioned, Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, Dallas, and Seattle, that's a critical stretch. And if you watch the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn, which you should be watching every Saturday at noon, we recorded on Thursday, but we lay it down on Saturday. And I mentioned this last week. If you guys watch that show and you don't not send comments, I will get the comments and I will bring them on this show and try to answer them if they're, if you want to do that. But just remember, if you do drop a comment during that show, no one's going to answer it because it's not live. I'm not actually there at noon on Saturday. That thing was recorded a couple of days ago. Matter of fact, when that show went live on Saturday, I was on the ice at the 1980 Miracle on Ice rink in Lake Placid, on the actual ice surface where the U.S. beat Russia in '80, reffing a game. So when you were watching that, I was reffing a hockey game. So in Lake Placid. But on Saturday, please, on the show, I told Kyle that if the Eagles were to find their way through this little gauntlet at 6-0, I would rebuke in any way he saw fit my attitude towards Howie, and I'm still going to stick to that. And I hope I have to. I do. I hope the Eagles figured it out, because the one bright spot that I pull from all this is that they are 8-1 and they've been doing it on talent. So they got the talent. It's just they got to find a way to get it all rowing in the same direction. And until they can kind of figure out what they're going to do with their secondary, because that is the main. If they put all their eggs in the secondary basket to try to fix that, and I mean linebackers, safeties, and cornerbacks, if they can fix that and find a way to get it better, everything else will fall into place. Everything else will work for this team. But they got to find a way to do that. They just got to. And right now, I just don't have confidence in them on the biggest stage, which is the Super Bowl. It's not what it's going to take to get there. The Eagles will probably be there based on what the competition level is in the NFC. It's dreck. They probably will be standing at the end. But they just can't expect that. They got to fight for it. And then when they are at the end, who are they staring down the barrel at? The Cincinnati Bengals? Joe Burrow would carve that secondary up. T. Higgins would carve that secondary up. Jamar Chase. Can you imagine the Eagles secondary trying to lock down Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Boyd and Burrow? Oh my God. The Kansas City Chiefs, who have already carved up the Eagles on the biggest stage. And then to a lesser point, because I think the window on the Buffalo Bills might be closing, Josh Allen. I just say we gotta bring it back, man. We gotta figure out the secondary. Gotta figure out the secondary. I was not a fan of the DC hire in the offseason and hasn't done it. Yep, I agree. Last night brought back memories of the NFC East. It did. Vic Fangio was one with the Eagles last year, and they couldn't cut a backdoor deal with him before the guy left. Yeah. Detroit would scare me, but then you need to see it, coach. Yeah, listen, Detroit is a good story, and they will be. Listen, I love the story of Detroit. I think it's a great thing. Only for the fact that it makes Thursday morning football on Thanksgiving that much better to watch. I really found it hard to tune into the 1-11 Detroit Lions versus the 11-1 Green Bay Packers on Thanksgiving morning. But to see competitive Detroit Lion football they're one of those teams that get the national game at least one every year on one of the biggest days of football year, Thanksgiving. It's finally good to see them be competitive. But no, they're nothing. They'll get blown over in a stiff wind by the Eagles. I'm not concerned. Jared Goff's their quarterback, for God's sake. But they're definitely trending in the right way. So, yeah. How did we bottle up Jefferson? Are you meaning Justin Jefferson from the Vikings? We didn't bottle him up this year. He had his. Last year we did, but that's not sure. But yeah. So anyway, there is my Eagle stuff. That ran over an hour, which I wasn't expecting to talk an hour about the Eagles, but it's okay. Let's transition now to the ice, the coldest sport in the land, the National Hockey League, and your Philadelphia Flyers, who had themselves an interesting weekend. Since we spoke last, they played 3 games, 2 against the Buffalo Sabres and 1 against the Los Angeles Kings. They went 1-1 or 1-2, I should say, in that stretch, losing pretty soundly to Buffalo on the first game of a home and home, and then coming back and winning an outstanding game on the road against Buffalo. Losing Carter Hart, though, in the process. Actually, they lost him in the first game against Buffalo, but losing Carter Hart in the process, which was not good. But they came back with a very good effort against the Buffalo Sabres in Buffalo before falling on their butts at home on a back-to-back against the Kings on Saturday. And now it's out to the West Coast against San Jose, Anaheim, and LA, and then wrapping it up in Carolina against the Hurricanes. So, an interesting week here for the Flyers. We're going to say interesting 2 weeks. Michael says, I hope the OC after the bye week runs the ball more. Yeah, I do too. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So they're dealing with some issues right now. Sean Couturier was a scratch. I think he was more of a precautionary scratch against the Kings on Saturday. Carter Hart, of course, now is going to be down 3 to 6 weeks with a mid-body injury. And, I don't know if we definitely have the backup goalie in Cal Peterson. Didn't look like he was. Was it me, or did he look really like a child with his goalie gear on? To include that, everything was too big on him. That mask looked like it covered up his entire head. It was just really kind of weird. But they shot holes in him relentlessly on Saturday, the Kings. But now they're out on the road. Sam Ersson, I think, was probably the most positive story from the week. There's been some questions about his ability. He had a really good bounce back game against Buffalo. He was kind of pressing the service against. So the start, was it 2 weeks ago or last weekend against Anaheim, was not a very good start from Ersson. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he had the greatest defense in front of him. He didn't. But there was a lot of goals on him in that game too. And then he gets pushed into that game against the Sabres, and he didn't look good. But then he bounced back on the road against Buffalo, so that was very positive. So heading into San Jose tomorrow night, they're going to go with him. Now, San Jose is in a situation much like the Flyers, both kind of rebuilding. This really is going to be, I don't know if the Flyers could win or lose this game. I mean, I heard, I guess Tortorella did a presser out there in San Jose today, and somebody asked him if they think this is a trap game. And he kind of laughed and said, we shouldn't know how to spell the word trap. I mean, why would somebody ask him if the Flyers are entering into a trap game? What are you doing? I mean, it's the Flyers. There is no trap games. Every game is a new adventure for this team. There's no game that they should go into feeling supremely confident that they should win. That was a very funny question. And although it's kind of funny how he said we shouldn't even know how to spell the word trap. But I think that going into this game, and Steven says he hopes we take 2. And I think they could possibly take 2. I think definitely the game against the Sharks, against us, a team that's kind of on the same page right now as you're fighting Philadelphia Flyers, the best chance would be to win that game. As you recall, last season out there in San Jose, the Flyers did something they rarely ever do, and that is win in overtime. They did that last year out in San Jose. It was on the Tony DeLangelo goal. Never forget. I don't know why I remember that game, but I do. But that's how you know, not very ordinary it is for the Flyers to win an overtime game. So, but they'll head out to San Jose starting tomorrow night. Steven says Peterson looked like a Reading Royal. You look like a child to me. You know, when you're a kid and you have to kind of, when you're playing sports as a kid and your mom or dad buys you some stuff that they necessarily, you know, they want to get more than one season out of. So they buy it a little bit bigger so you kind of grow into it. That's what it looked like he was wearing the other night. His mask looked like it was huge on him. Like you couldn't even see his face through the cage. It just looked like he was a child out there. It was pretty funny, man. It was actually kind of embarrassing, but pretty funny. So Flyers 5-6-1, 11 points, 12 games. You know, nothing really shocking there. It's been what the season's been advertised. It's, you know, going to be that kind of season for them. They're going to be a hovering 500 team. If they, you know, I'm not going to sit here. I don't think we're going to talk playoffs, but you know, they could find their way into some scenarios as they try to figure themselves out. 4-41, mind-boggling on the power play this season. That works out to less than 10% effective. I've never ever in my life have I reported or seen that stat. The Flyers are literally less than 10% effective on the power play. You know, we're 1 month into the season, and you can kind of maybe give that some credence, but I've never seen a power play look so inept in my life than the Flyer power play. And firing Rocky Thompson is not the answer. It's not. You know, we went down this road a couple of years ago with Michel Therrien by saying, "Oh, you got to fire him. He's the reason why the power play was no good." It wasn't. Matter of fact, let me just give you those. Remember that a couple of years ago when this thing began to kind of unravel. So before, during that season, the Flyers were 8 for 66 on the power play with Michel Therrien as the power play coach. It was about 12%. When they fired him and Mike Yeo took over in his staff, they went 20 for 167 the rest of the way on the power play, and that was for 11%. So that had absolutely nothing to do with the power play coach. And this, in my opinion, is the same thing. I just don't think they have enough horses in the stables for this. I mentioned this before on the Clear the Ice show, which I will be doing a lot of those games. So make sure you're checking me out here on, I think tomorrow night. We're going on the air at 1:45. We're doing the post game right after the Sharks game at like 2 a.m. So make sure you're up late with me tomorrow night. But they just don't have the horses in the stable. They don't have the talent, the high end talent to put on a power play, and that's why you're getting what you're getting. It's not like they're generating opportunities. They're just not able to finish, and that's where the superstar talent comes in, or the high end talent, and they just don't have it. But 4 for 41 is different world stuff, and it's depressing to watch them out there. But firing Rocky Thompson is not the answer. It's getting more talent here is the answer for that. They've scored 37 goals so far this season for about 3 a game. They've given up 39. It's a little bit over 3. They registered 376 shots on the season. That's averaging out to about 31 shots a game. I can live with that. That is a good number. They've given up 320 shots for 27 a game, so they're out shooting their opponents on average every night. They're 0-1 in overtime. They scored 4 shorthanded goals, which is amazing, where they can't score on the power play, but they're killing it shorthanded. They've recorded 79 takeaways and 71 giveaways. That's 6.6 takeaways and 5.9 giveaways a game. And currently with Ryan Ellis, Ristolainen, Mark Stahl, and now Carter Hart on the injured reserve, they have $16.25 million of their salary cap currently on IR. Let that number sink in a little bit. But that's where the Flyers are heading out west, and they'll get things going against the San Jose Sharks tomorrow night. Sean Couturier and Carter Hart both made the trip out west. So obviously you're not going to see Carter Hart, but you potentially will see, hopefully, Sean Couturier return to the lineup. And maybe we can steal 2. I think we could steal 2. I think we could definitely win that San Jose game and potentially either one of the Anaheim or the LA game. Listen, I think they can for wrapping things up. So That's your little bit of the Flyers. Not really much to sink my teeth into. Just kind of giving you a check-in on them. That's really all there is to talk about with the Flyers. Just to kind of check in, and then let's wrap things up. Well, before I wrap up the Phillies, let's wrap up this. Let's talk about some. If you're looking to travel like the pros, look no further than Philly Sports Trips. They have you covered for all your Eagles, Flyers, Sixers, Phillies, Union needs. Head over to phillysportstrips.com and see what they have to offer. Don't forget Sherry's Ticket Town. If you're not going to travel like the pros and you're going to stay local, then you need to head over to Sherry's Ticket Town at www.sherrystickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946. Save additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10 for great prices and no hidden fees. Sherry's Ticket Town is the place to go. And if life has thrown you a curveball and you have some workman's compensation, motor vehicle accident, or personal injury, or criminal law questions, Dave Cherry at 610-565-0300 is the man you got to give a holler to. Tell Dave that the folks here at the Edge of Philly Sports and Talking Philly Sports, the Matty B sent you, and he will do the very best he can with you. And don't forget, this is our lineup. I talked about this earlier in the show, but don't forget, this is the lineup for the rest of the week. Make sure, listen, I fully believe this. If you can't find it on EOP, it doesn't exist in Philadelphia sports. So there's EOP. And then don't forget, on Saturdays at noon, the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. Kyle will come on and we will go in more depth about what I talked about with Eagles with him, get his take on where this team stands for at the bye, and we will look at everything heading into week 10, or I say week 11 against the Kansas City Chiefs, as the Eagles will get ready to deal with the defending Super Bowl champions coming off the bye. So let's talk some Eagles or some Phillies real fast, and then we'll wrap things up with my week 10 NFL picks. So today, free agency has officially begun in the MLB. The Phillies did, as expected, make a $20 million qualifying offer to Aaron Nola and not to Rhys Hoskins. So Nola, who probably will not sign this qualifying offer, he's definitely going to explore his opportunities, I think, out there in free agency. He was tendered that deal, so that protects him from the Phillies losing him and not getting some compensation with the draft pick. So Aaron Nola have been tendered a qualifying offer, but Rhys Hoskins not, seemingly sealing the deal for Rhys Hoskins and his future in the Phillies. I think there's some people out there that are saying it doesn't mean that he won't re-sign with the Phillies. I agree with that, but I just don't think that that's what the Phillies want to do. I think it's the wrong thing for the Phillies to do. I think they've had that conversation with Bryce Harper. Remember we got to see if Bryce wants to play first base or whatever. Maybe they had that conversation, and I think Bryce might have said, yeah, I'll play first base. So I think Rhys Hoskins' days as a Philly are over. But as of today, every expiring contract has now expired, and they're now official free agents in MLB. Be on the lookout for some hot stove stuff as we will try to wrap things up. And also be on the lookout for the Fightins Final. That's right. The Fightins Final will return one more time here very soon, as we will give you our 2023 Phillies season review show. Me and the others, Pat, Mike, and Al, we're going to come at you and give you our season wrap show of the 2023 Phillies. And again, it's okay to talk about the Phillies too. And also the Phillies were active on the trade market today. They claimed or they acquired Michael Mercado from the Tampa Bay Rays, and they selected the contract. And then they also what else? And then they also picked up a pitcher from them. What was that kid's name? Oh man, I had that up here. Oh, there it is. Josh Fleming. So Phillies acquired two players today from the Tampa Bay Rays. Josh Fleming, who's a left-handed pitcher, actually, I guess he kind of pans out to be operating more in the Dylan Covey mold, coming in for some mid-inning leverage. He'll probably be, forced to win that job in the spring. And then Michael Machado, who only pitched, I think he got as high as AAA for the Rays last year, will probably be earmarked for Lehigh Valley next season. So Phillies making some moves today as well. So it's on. Phillies are now starting to retool as they will now try to put the season behind and move forward. So that was your Phillies very, very much in a nutshell. And Greg Counsell is returned to Major League Baseball. He was named the manager. Craig Counsell, was named the manager of the Chicago Cubs today. So he's back in baseball. see that. I actually like Craig Counsell as a manager. I liked him a lot when he was in Baltimore or Milwaukee. But that is going to do it. Let's wrap things up with my Week 10 picks. I didn't give you my Week 9 picks last week, so let's kind of recap Week 9. Now, I know Week 9 is ongoing as we speak. I am not watching the game. But so far in Week 9, I've gone 8-5. Now, if I get the game tonight, I'll be 9-5. On the season, I'm 78-54. Hopefully, we'll be 79-54 after tonight. But here are my Week 10 picks right now, rapid fire. Thursday night, Carolina versus Chicago. Give me the Panthers. That's Thursday Night Football. Indianapolis. Give me Indy. Cleveland, Baltimore. I'm taking Baltimore. Green Bay, Pittsburgh. San Francisco, Jacksonville. Give me the 49ers. Texans and Cincinnati. Give me the Bengals. Tennessee versus Tampa. Tennessee. Detroit, Chargers. Detroit. Atlanta versus Arizona. ATL all the way. New York Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys. Don't care who the Dallas Cowboys are playing. I will never pick them. Give me the dumpster fire Giants. Washington versus Seattle. Sunday night, Jets and Raiders. That's a pig game, but give me the Jets. And then a even piggier game on Monday night, Denver versus the Buffalo Bills, taking Buffalo. So there you have my Week 10 picks. I am sorry that I did not give you my Week 9 picks last week, but things happen. But there they are, my Week 10 picks. And that is going to do it for me tonight. Folks, I hope you had a great time. I appreciated your contributions. I enjoyed your time. It is always a pleasure to spend time with you. And don't forget, Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn coming up later in the week and everything else that we have here on the show. Post-game shows, the breakdown shows. It is bi-week, but that doesn't mean it stops. So make sure you're continuously checking us out here on EOP. Like and subscribe, smash the bell, do all those things that you do. Make EOP your one-stop shop for Philadelphia sports. And until next time, folks, that is the news, and I'm out of here.